G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. Aged 19 in 2007, launched her writing business, travelling around the world in her early 20s, writing an award-winning blog, staying with friends and living on $22,000 a year of earnings. Mid-20s, settled back in Australia and doubled revenue 3 years in a row to hit over 100 grand per annum, peaking at $249,000 aged 27. At only 23, she was asked to write her first book, is now a writer, author, speaker, trainer, coach and consultant. Working with people who want to change the world, she loves to help people find and fulfill their purpose on the planet. The 70 to 80% of her sales are from training courses and coaching, rest from speaking and the 11 books she's published, launched over 25 online courses on writing and publishing books, and building a business from 0 to 100 grand a year as a coach. Clients all over the world, 1 FTE to now 2, spread across 5 contractors. Felt she'd succeeded when a couple of moments over the years when she realised she didn't work for anyone. The hardest thing about growing a small business is making sure the business is taking you in the direction of your purpose and your legacy. What Emily would tell herself on day one of starting out is, don't you dare give up. Great things are coming. Go back to episode 15 and hear how Bill started his distillery in a town of less than 1,000 people in Michigan, USA. He now has 150 full-time equivalents in summer, and early in the business literally had to chase cars down the street to get them to stop and come in and try their products.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Emily Gowor from Emily Gowor.
Thank you. I love that. What a great introduction.
We were just speaking then. It's actually Emily Gowor is your personal brand that you trade under, you market yourself under. Yeah. So thanks for your time today, Emily.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And how we know each other, Peter, part of the outreach project that I've mentioned before, got in touch, and really grateful you're able to come on the cast today.
Perfect. Yeah, you're looking for some more females in your lineup. I love that.
Yes. Tell our audience a bit about your business, where it's located, what it does, and how it makes money. Yeah,
sure. So I say always in my heart, I'm an inspirational writer. I love writing. I have done it ever since I was a little girl. And so when I really discovered that that's what I wanted to do, I wanted to build a business doing what I love. So I always say that I believe that everybody has greatness inside of them. And I love to help people find and fulfill their purpose on the planet. So that's where I started out really early, age 19. I was, really young. And I started out writing. So I started doing professional writing. And then over time, this developed. So today I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. I do a lot of training programs and helping people to grow a business, mostly as a coach, consultant, speaker, somebody who wants to change the world. They're the people that I work with, the people that want to make that difference. And also all of my programs and training and my writing is all around that.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. And so you were 19 when you started out. Maybe walk us through the journey and then let the audience know how old you are now so they've got some context.
Oh, yeah, because people are like, how old are you now? So I'm currently 32. So it's been more than a decade that I started out in business. Yeah, age 19. So I started out originally as a sole trader. And because I knew that I loved to write, I basically started doing professional writing for entrepreneurs because I was connected with entrepreneurial circles in and around Roger Hamilton's work. And also I did NLP. So I did self-development at a really early age. And so I started doing professional writing. And that was my first step in the direction of realizing that I didn't have to work in a job. I could do something that I love to do. So it went from professional writing, and I was doing that for a few years. I landed an opportunity to edit a best-selling book for Dr. Don DeMartini, who was one of the guys out of The Secret. So he's been one of my mentors for more than a decade. And so I went from professional writing to age 23, I got offered the opportunity to write and publish my first book. And so after I started that, people then asked me, can you coach me to write a book? So I sort of developed my work in and around working with authors, but have done a lot of work in coaching people to have the life that they want and growing a 6-figure career around their calling and their purpose. So it started out very organically after me having a rock bottom moment of trying to work out what I wanted to do. And then really following the yellow brick road and following those signs of inspiration, and also obviously learning business skills so that I could package that and take it out to people.
Yep, great. And just back on NLP for our audience, that's neuro-linguistic programming. And is that something you still use now? It's around the words we use, isn't it? And
Yeah, there's a lot of understanding. It's really a self-development tool. I think Anthony Robbins, he made it probably the most famous
Right.
out of anyone else. So a lot of using language to change how
Yep.
we see the world. So I would say that my training in NLP when I was young definitely shaped my writing today and obviously speaking. But I've also done a lot of other extensive personal growth work since then.
Yep. Great. And do you have any key numbers you can share with the audience to illustrate the growth over the 13 years?
Yeah, definitely. So in my early 20s, I was very blessed. I ended up traveling the world and I was on a one-way ticket for about 2 or 3 years. And I was basically staying with people from my networks, making friends, building relationships, and having a blast. And I was blogging and I won awards for my blog. And at the time I was definitely doing what I loved. And sometimes even today I envy the simplicity of my life back then. I mean, I didn't even have a 3-month plan, let alone a 12-month plan or a 10-year plan. But what happened was then I was probably earning about $22,000 a year. So, I mean, I wasn't paying rent. I was staying with people everywhere. It was kind of bliss. It was difficult at times. But then in my mid-20s, I decided to come back to Australia, put down my roots. And so I started learning business skills and I started to double my revenue. So I doubled my revenue 3 years in a row. And so that then took me into that six-figure mark. I then banked 249,000. That was my biggest revenue to date. I was about 26 or 27 at the time, and my business has done 6 figures a year every year since then. In the first 6 months of opening my company, because I moved from being a sole trader to having a company entity, which is a different ballgame in terms of financial management. It's a totally different level. We banked 6 figures in the first 6 months of opening that. So I had a lot of growth in a very short period of time in my late 20s.
Yep. Great. And maybe can you break down like the rough percentages of what revenue looks like, where it comes from your different sources
today? Yeah, so I would say if I think about my stats today, I don't have like the exact number, but about probably 70 to 80% of my revenue today is coming from training and mentoring. So programs, coaching, a lot of one-on-one coaching, and a lot of training programs.
Yep.
And the rest of it is divided down through like book sales, because obviously I'm an author as well. Book sales, sometimes speaking, and other kind of things that we do along the way.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the books because you've published 11 books. Is that right now?
I do have 11 books. Yes, I think I say my last one's my masterpiece. It just took me 10 books to get it right. No, I've done a lot. I read a lot of books in my 20s, and I think I was finding my voice. But yeah, my latest one came out 2019. So
yeah, great. And what was your experience with publishing the books and promoting and selling them, I guess?
Yeah, so they've all had different results, and it really is dependent on how much we've promoted the different books. For me, when I'm promoting a book and I'm looking for impact, I'm looking not just for how many books it sells, but I'm also looking for how much it changes someone's life. I feel my last one has definitely had the biggest success for that. But we've had some of our projects that were like 3,000 books sold in a matter of weeks. So it varies. It depends on what we've done. But the way I see it is that the book is really an extension of the personal brand, but it's also a beautiful way to have a first contact with somebody. So doing a speaking event and then having people buy the book off the back end of that. It's a doorway into the world of what you do.
Yeah.
So I love the books. Yeah.
And your most recent books, they're physically published as well as you do audio and Kindle versions?
Correct. Yeah, I actually am a big believer in having the printed book because my research has told me that people love the real thing. We call it the real thing. So most people love that printed version. And so it's always been my preference, especially the last one. It's my first hardback book. So we love that hardcover. It's beautiful. So yeah, they're all in print, all of them.
Yeah, great. And just back on key numbers, team members. So I assume you started out just on your own, one FTE. Do you have any other team members at the moment?
Doing everything, yeah. So I have a series of contractors. I think at the moment I have 5 or 6 different contractors that work different hours per week, and they do different roles in the business. So I have definitely an assistant. I've had multiple assistants. I have a project manager that works with me as well. Email marketing manager, graphic designers. I have quite a wide range of team members.
Yep. So what would they roll up to full-time equivalent wise? 40-hour week, would it be 120 hours across those?
It's probably a little bit less. Like we've actually made my business quite efficient. So some of them work around 10 hours a week and some of them only work 1 or 2. So it really depends on the role that they're fulfilling and what the business is doing. But I'd say on an average week, I probably have team working around 15 to 20 hours, I would say.
Yeah, across that team, yeah. And how does it go? Are they all remote?
Most of them are. I have some that are here in Brisbane, one in particular that's here in Brisbane, but most of them are remote, yes.
Yep, great.
Which is good for, when the globe suddenly has to upgrade and everybody goes online. That's actually worked really well. My business has been online for years, so very efficient. Yeah.
And what about some of the speaking? If you can talk a bit to that, like your experience there and how that works.
Yeah, definitely. So I absolutely love speaking because for me, of course, it's all about, for me, I say my mission is to share inspiration. So the standing on stage and sharing messages with people, reaching into their lives, helping them with that, that's always been deeply meaningful for me. So I've done a range of different speaking opportunities. I actually got flown, all expenses paid, across the world back in 2017 to be part of an inspirational conference. I went all the way to Ireland, actually. So it was literally the other side of the planet. That was an amazing experience. So I usually have spoken at events where people have wanted me to speak on a topic of inspiration to bring that. So a lot of female entrepreneur networks, that tends to be one of my preferred audiences, and also where I get asked to speak quite a lot, is to help empower women in business to find their voice, to share their gifts with the world. So I've done a lot of speaking in that space. I've also spoken alongside like Dr. John Demartini. I've spoken on his stage a couple of times, and I also spoke for one of Australia's biggest promoters, I think back in 2014. And that company is no longer, I think, doing what they do. But I've had a range of different speaking opportunities over the years.
Yeah, good. And what about online courses? It's not something you offer at the moment. Is that something you consider?
Yeah, I do. I actually offer a lot of online trainings. I've actually packaged and sold over 25 online programs over the years. Right. Mm-hmm. So I have 9 author training programs just in the different areas of writing a book, publishing a book. I have 9 programs in that area, but I also have an online program, which is all about building a business from 0 to 100K plus per year as a coach. Yep. So I have a business training, I have purpose trainings. I actually have done a lot of work in the online space because I have clients that are all over the world. So I find that it's easier to reach them and make a difference when you're actually facilitating something online.
Yeah, totally agree. We launched the Distillers Institute online course 3 or 4 months ago now. We've got 104 students doing that.
Amazing.
We've been blown away with the traction and the feedback we're getting.
People
and you can
love
reach
it.
more. Yeah, and you can reach more people, like you just said. Help
Definitely.
a lot more people. And so the revenue from the courses, and that's part of that 70% you were saying.
Definitely. Yeah, all the it's really in the training and mentoring space. Yep.
Yep, great. When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
That's a really great question. So, because I think you really have to define what success means for you.
Yep.
So
that's the next question.
Yeah. So I feel like those two are so connected together. Yeah. So success for me, I think I'm going to go in reverse because success for me has so much been about impact, and the numbers are a part of that. They're a measure for that. They're a measuring stick to let you know that you're changing lives. And so for me, the success, it has always been about like, how much am I loving what I'm doing? And am I changing lives? And then we look at the numbers around that to see if we have the right model. So for me to know that I was succeeding, one was, I've had a couple of moments over the years where I went, hang on a sec, I don't work for anybody. Because as a business owner, you get so focused on what you need to do next that you sometimes stop to forget, you forget to smell the roses, basically. Yep. And so that has happened a lot for me. And I had a moment actually just the other week where I realized it's been nearly 13 years since I was employed by anybody. Yeah. And I think that's pretty incredible. So I've had certainly moments like that where I realized I've been doing this pretty successfully for a long time and changing lives. But so I had a lot of amazing feedback along the way, but I think that was definitely one of them. And also in my 20s, before I turned 30 and started hitting that, oh my God, I'm 30, realization, I won the Anthill 30 Under 30 Entrepreneur Award twice, actually, 2012
Congratulations.
and 2014. Thank you. So that was really beautiful acknowledgement, I think, of the difference I was making on the planet as well.
Yeah. Yeah, good. And I think that's a really good point. A lot of business owners / entrepreneurs forget to stop and celebrate, or just remind themselves of not just successful milestones, but just that what they're doing and living is actually success. There's a shit ton of people out there that hate their jobs and working, for the boss might be an arsehole, or just the work's not that interesting. And we're pretty blessed in our cohort, I think, business owners, to be, I love 99.997% of the things I do. Yeah. And it's from in my network of friends, etc., that's non-business owners I'm talking about. It's quite rare for people to be loving their careers.
Yeah, no, it's such a challenge. Like I say, being in business is one of the greatest personal development programs you will ever find on the planet. It's so challenging. It really brings out your weaknesses, your self-worth challenges. It brings out a lot of different things that you didn't even know you needed to deal with. but it empowers you. And when you stop and you look back and you realize how much you've grown as a result of it. I mean, I'm kind of in love with this whole process. There's no way I would trade it. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a point there. A lot of it is, I believe, mental. It's in the business owner's head. They've got to remove a lot of barriers to get to that stage of success, I think, in which I guess you would coach a lot in that space,
I do.
assuming.
Absolutely.
Yep. Number one thing you'd recommend in marketing a fast-growing business?
I would absolutely recommend honing in on your specific person and finding out exactly who that is and dominating your marketing on resonating with that one person. I've spoken to a lot of people and a lot of authors and also a lot of coaches. Who do you want to help? I want to help everybody. That just it never works that way. So one of my key realizations was I don't want to work with everybody. And so I think to understand that you actually have a particular person you love to work with, but those people are also the ones that love to work with you. And so working out who that is and then making sure that you talk specifically to them. And perhaps this comes from me being a writer. Whenever I write a book, I'm thinking about the specific person that's reading it. And my goal is to reach that person and touch them in the most impactful way. If you bring that across to your marketing, I would say that's the key to success. A lot of it is finding out not just where they're at, how to reach them, what platforms they spend time on, but finding out where they're really at and talking to that. And say that has been the most powerful thing for me. I've watched this in my marketing. A lot of my business has come through social media platforms, and it's because I write so personally and I talk to them where they're at, and then they resonate with that and they find me. It's not just me reaching out to them.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, we'll talk about funding. Unless you've got anything else on marketing you want to touch on?
No, that's probably the big one. Yeah.
Yep, great. And how did you fund your business?
I funded my business with hustle.
Hustle.
Well, hustle less if you're a female. Yep. So hustle and a little bit of muscle. So a whole lot of soul. I didn't have anyone that came in and said, hey, I'm going to give you 100K of funding, or I didn't have that. But I also don't believe that my business necessarily required that. So that's one of the blessings of a coaching, consulting, speaking-based business is you start with you, and it's about learning how to package that, productize that, and reach the right people, and you need networks. So the assets, the resources that helped me to grow to where I am today largely were not actually from financial input. They were from me putting myself out there and putting in the hard yards through time and hustle. It's hustle, basically. Yeah.
Great. So all through organic cash flows, no investors, bank finance or grants or anything like that?
I had at one point a small business loan. So like using a little bit of credit in the company, but not for like, I'm going to invest to use this to grow. It was like a minor amount of training. So I would basically say no. The whole thing has been based on cash flow and opportunities from great relationships that I've had. Yeah.
Well done. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
100%. I think training, consulting, mentoring, and working with humans to help people, I think for me, that's so satisfying. I would do it 100 times over. Yep.
And can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. So I had in my late 20s, I think I was around 28. So it was probably about 4.5 years ago. I basically because I had doubled my revenue, I had expanded so quickly. I was not really ready for the company structure. So there were things that I did not understand about how to manage money well in a business. And so long story short, I think I probably had a little bit of poor accounting advice or not enough accounting advice. I didn't know what to ask for, and I wasn't quite sure how it all was meant to flow. And so what happened was we took my portion as the owner of the company as a dividend rather than a wage. And I ended up not paying myself a lot that year. I worked harder than I'd ever worked, and I ended up with a whopping tax bill. And so and it broke me because I was so burned out because I hadn't learned boundaries. I needed to work on my self-worth. I really went into such a deep space of personal breakdown that I was ready to tap out. It was very stressed. And I haven't often talked about it, but it's so important. And do you know what? Largely it was a money management issue. So I then had to learn, how do we manage money properly? I read the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Yeah, a few people have mentioned that in the cast. It's
great book, fabulous book. Also his book, The Pumpkin Plan and Clockwork. His books are incredible for business owners. I applied that to my company. We learned good money management. We put systems in place, and it's a totally different world today. I mean, radically different reality from where I was. But that was the breaking point for me, was that I'd learned how to market and expand and sell and serve. And I certainly have the heart to do it. but I didn't have those fundamental money management skills behind me. And it nearly cracked me in half. I had so much trouble recovering from that because I also lost a lot of dignity as well. And I felt like I'd failed, and I kind of had to pull myself up off the floor for a while there. So it took me a couple of years to recover from it.
Yeah, it's a good point, because money or finance is not just a big pressure point and stress point in businesses, and a lot of people don't have the awareness or skills around money management. So, but also in marriages as well, as you'd probably come across, it is often a big point of conflict in relationships. Money. Absolutely. If you don't have your money under control and sorted and communicated well, then it can actually put a lot of pressure on the relationship or the business.
It's so important. And you know what, I really got it. So a couple of really great quotes. One was from one of my clients who once said, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. So it's the whole idea of, because I think in the industry of, people saying grow a 6-figure business, and there's a lot of puff. There's a lot of, oh, you can make 100K in a month. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't manage that well, you can end up in the worst financial position of your life. And so there's a lot of that puff piece. They're like, go bigger, harder. I'm like, it's not necessarily about that. And one of the other quotes that really comes to mind is something DeMartini says, is when you manage your money wisely, you get more money to manage. So learning to have the right structures in place, getting your tax aside ahead of time, taking a profit percentage off the top, making sure you actually pay yourself no matter what comes into the business. That, I think those are the fundamentals that I had to learn. Those are actually what changed the life. Those are what make the big difference in the long term.
Yep, great. And what area in business do you feel you had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
So great question, but I would have to say, if I reflect back over the last decade, probably myself, and there's a lot of self-worth and confidence. So for me, being a personal brand, that was perhaps even more important, because it was all about me. It was all about how I show up, the energy I bring, how I am as a speaker, what value am I offering, am I willing to receive money, proper payment for what I do. So I would say that self-worth is the biggest mountain that I had to climb personally to take my business to where it is today, was learning to value, and not just value and love myself, but also respect myself for the value that I offer. So that was definitely the toughest part for me.
Great. And what have you enjoyed least about managing the growth?
Wow. Well, other than the financial challenge I had, there's obviously other challenges that come along with growth. And one of them for me was that I started out as a writer. So in my early 20s, I had this beautiful simplicity to my life. And I never understood how other people would say they didn't have time. And it's because my life was so simple. I'd do enough writing jobs to keep me going, and I'd travel to Bali or I'd go somewhere else. And I laugh today, I'm going, well, you just had no idea how good you had it.
Yep.
But what happened was, when I opened the company and I started growing my business, things got more complicated. And so have found at times I get pulled away from my writing. I sometimes get pulled away because of other things that need to be done. And that has periodically been a bit of a challenge in the growth, because when you want to go to the next level, you need to, for me, I put in more hustle, right? So you're putting in new systems, new programs, you're upgrading your training team. So even though I love it, occasionally I have had a little friction around that, and needing to maintain that balance between the things I love doing and making sure I don't lose sight of those.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's something you've got to continually maintain and check yourself on. I certainly have to.
Oh yeah.
Because as I've said in the cast before, it's a double-edged sword. Love what we do, but it can also knock your balance out. Yeah, it can be all-consuming. Well, on that, what do you love most about growing a small business?
Oh, such an amazing ride. I never get on roller coasters, but I tell you, this is the best one. So I love the opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives. I love how business is a vehicle for me to become very close with a perfect stranger and have a meaningful interaction that changes their life and changes mine. I love that. And it sounds mushy, but I really mean it. I find that so satisfying. And I love the way that for me particularly, and perhaps especially with a personal brand, that my brand is an opportunity for me to also express myself. So being a writer, I use that as a platform for that. So I have to say, I love that. I've always loved business because I think it's a vehicle to fulfill your purpose on the planet. If it's set up the right way, and you are in the right business. So there's a lot of, little things that need to be paid attention to in that. But I do think it's a vehicle for us to do what we love and fulfill our potential and our greatness. So for me, that's definitely been it. When I look at how much I've grown and the difference that I've made. And if you told me 10 years ago that I'd done what I'd done, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But now I look back and go, wow, that was incredible. And I'm still I always feel like I'm at the bottom of the next mountain, and I'm sure that most business owners feel that way.
Yep. Yeah. And what's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I would have to say it's kind of linked to what I was talking about with self-worth. So that was absolutely one of them, a very big fundamental change in how I viewed myself, because I was quite shy actually as a teenager, and I had a lot of self-worth challenges at school, had a lot of insignificant stuff going on. People don't really want to hear me. So I had a lot of personal things to work on. But and I've worked through, I would say, the majority of that today. I'm very confident in who I am, and I love who I am, and I'm very inspired by that. But I think one of the things that had helped me was that it's sometimes in business we can take things so personally. So if somebody doesn't like our product or doesn't like what we do, or they go somewhere else, you have to understand it's actually not about you, it's all about them. And so I learned to turn my attention outwardly, and that helped me enormously with self-worth, because I realized it's actually not really about me. It's actually about helping the other person where they're at. And that has helped me monumentally in marketing, sales, what preview webinars to run, what to frame my talks around. It's helped so much, because I realized I'm here in service of them. So it's not all about me, picking myself apart and finding issues with who I am. It's about me taking what I have and using that to change someone else's life. And that's been huge for me.
Yeah, I've dipped in and out of that, exactly what you're speaking of then. And my ex the other week said something to me when I dropped my daughter at school. She's with me week on, week off. And apparently some of the other mothers of the school were commenting on me turning up in activewear most days. And I said to Kate, I don't give a flying fuck what other people think, And she, she was a bit shocked by it, but she's pretty resilient. She just said, "Oh, good on you." Yeah, and
yeah,
I really don't care.
No, you need to be who you are. I mean, it's just what Steve Jobs was basically wearing the same clothes, like same freaking outfit, like all the time, and it worked because he was just maximizing his time and his energy on what mattered and being authentic. And so for me, I go, just do that. Like if this is who you are, be who you are. Don't be ashamed of that. Rock up and make your business work around you as well. Don't just try to fit yourself into a box.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Time blocking. Oh, such a fan of time blocking. Time blocking has not only, I think, saved my life and saved my health and enabled me to maintain that, there's also been a critical factor for my productivity. So time blocking, just in a nutshell, is where you group similar type of tasks together into one time block. So what I've seen is that people I don't know how they do it. They have their emails on their phone, they have their emails on their watch. They have
sweet mother of God, this chestnut just gets me. I call what you're describing there as batching, but I think you're also speaking of, have you read Cal Newport's book, Deep Work?
I have. I absolutely am obsessed with that book.
Yep.
I also read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, which is in a lot of ways a simplified version of the book, Deep Work. So The One Thing is amazing. I loved Deep Work. I actually got the inspiration for my latest book while reading Deep Work. I loved that book. I devoured it. But yeah, so grouping similar tasks together. So I do not have Facebook Messenger on my phone. I don't, and so you're having boundaries around time blocks. I don't let my clients text me. Everything is done on email, and it's very segmented. And if I'm going to write a piece of sales copy, phone gets flipped over, everything else gets shut out, and I just am so present doing that one thing. And so I don't fragment. I don't have my emails on all throughout the day. Open, like having those definitive time blocks, it enables you to work out what matters and what to put your time to, because what you put your time and energy into is where you get results. Yeah,
I read a Harvard article some years ago. I think it was talking about for every distraction you have, if you're working particularly on a document where you need a lot of attention, a strategic document, if you get an interruption, it can take you up to 25 minutes to get back into where you were in that document. And I remember saying probably 10 years ago when Microsoft, and I hate Microsoft these days, I won't start on that rant, but when they released Microsoft Office and the toaster pop-up thing notification when you got an email was set to automatically be turned on for everyone. I've ranted to someone, they've just destroyed 17% of productivity around the world because you just don't need more distractions.
No, we already have so much. And if you think about mindset for a moment, how much we have going on inside our own brains on a daily basis is exorbitant. It's a lot. And so you don't need to make that worse. So if you're constantly like, I don't have Facebook notifications on my phone. I do have Facebook on my phone, but I'm selective when I use it and how I use it. Same with Instagram, same with other platforms. You cannot function productively or have a breakthrough or make that breakthrough decision in your business if you're constantly fragmenting your attention and diluting it. And it takes brain energy, it takes mental willpower and energy to shift your focus from an accounting task to a client task, right?
Yes.
So you don't want to make that harder on yourself. So time blocking for me is critical. I usually time block half days. So I go half day work on this, other half of the day work on that. And then I'm realistic. We are not superhumans, unfortunately. No. We're not. We are just human beings, and we also need to learn to work within elements.
Yeah, and all those distractions are mentally exhausting, you know.
Oh,
so
100%.
you're not saving your best creativity for your most valuable work.
Exactly.
You're frittering it away. I really do encourage everyone listening to have a look at Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. It was a great one I listened to a couple of years ago, and I've certainly changed a lot of my habits to get more out of my time.
It's a great book.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success. Then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com. Can you talk about how you added people to your team? Some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, definitely. So whenever I bring on, I have a couple of rules when I bring on someone into my team. So if you're starting your team from scratch, I usually recommend that you delegate administration first, because it's usually the easiest work for someone else to do a lot of the time. It's also one of the cheaper ones to delegate. So I would always peel away admin and then work your way up to peeling away the more difficult tasks. So one of the things that I do is I try to focus on one role per person. So if I need somebody to come in, like we're crafting a new role at the moment around social media, I just want one person. I don't want to give them everything. I don't fantasize that there's going to be one person who's going to save my business. That person is me. That's it. I don't expect that of anyone else. So I try to give them one role so that they can be present, because they're like me. If they get too many things given to them, they'll drop a ball somewhere. So I go one role per person, just have them master admin, have them master the email marketing, have them master each. And that's why I have more team members rather than a couple that are full-time. So as I split it down that way. And the other thing is that when I'm interviewing somebody, I am definitely looking for an alignment in the skill set, but I also want to know where they're at in their life. So if I'm going to hire an assistant, for example, I want to know what else is going on in their life to find out how present they're going to be. Because I need to know what I need from that person. Example, I need them to respond to me 5 days a week, multiple times a day. Great. I need to make sure their life actually facilitates that. Because I've had a couple of team members that ended up kind of checking out after a couple of months, and then I have to go train someone new. So I think questions like that are really important. Finding out what their goals are at, how old are they, what's their situation in life, what do they want, and then seeing how your role is going to help them to get that. So I think those two things: hire one person for the role, for each role, and then be present with where they're at and be realistic about what they can do and how they're going to do it. And I had an assistant who, it was quite funny. It was an interesting learning for me. When I was looking at revenues and what had been banked in the last 6 months, I noticed that our revenue had tanked. It just dropped through the floor. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not a money generation problem with clients. This is a money collection issue. And then I worked out that my assistant had basically a massive weakness in financials. And I didn't know that, didn't think to ask her. She didn't tell me. When I told her I was going to take that role off her, she actually, all capital letters in her message, thank God. Okay. Making sure, because she didn't say anything. She didn't want to disappoint me. She's like, I tried, but I suck at it, So make sure you put the right person in the right role too, as much as possible.
Totally agree on that. Yeah, absolutely. And this may be a bit difficult with a mostly remote and part-time team, but what are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
So one thing that I've noticed is that I've had team members that are some of them are offshore, obviously, and they've been with me for years. And one of the things that I've noticed is that they all get what I do and why I do what I do. So I don't necessarily ask them to understand that, but I seem to kind of attract that, where I'm so serious about my mission and vision. I'm so clear on what that is, that it almost makes you more attractive for people to stay with you for the long term. So if as a business owner, you're not quite clear on what your culture is, like I know what my culture is. It's about helping people get the best outcome. It's about inspiring the planet. And those are two things that we stand for. And so my team need to perform to that. And so I think it's about, I do have team that talk to each other and communicate with each other as well. They all understand that. And so I would say that being really clear on who you are and what you stand for, and you exemplifying that, I think is one of the most important things you can do, because that will naturally come through your team. So I'm friendly, I'm personal to my team. I'll talk to them. I know where they're at in their life. Call them cute nicknames occasionally, call them Sunshine, but I encourage that. I'm actually encouraging them too, because I want them to have the best life. So I think treating them like their family, but keeping professionalism, I think is really important. But you walking your talk, I think is so important, because then you attract the right people.
Yep. Yeah, great. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I know you and I were talking about this a little earlier, is that life skill on how to switch your brain off is very true. They can be very tricky, especially when you own a business. They say, some people say, what, I work 70 hours a week so that I don't have to go work for someone else and at 40 hours a week. So it's a little bit like that. So I definitely have a highly creative brain, a very brain that likes to move forward. I like progress. So I've definitely had to learn to switch off. So time blocking, which we talked about, has been essential for that. So I have, for example, like 2 days a week where I double down and I work with my clients, and I love those days, but I don't expect myself to do anything else outside of that. So time blocking allows my brain to be present with what I'm doing. And then after about, depending if I'm running a program, usually at nighttime, I'm done with any kind of serious business work by 6, usually by 6 o'clock. Anything after that's just going to be a bonus. And by 8 o'clock, I'm out. That's personal time. So, and then on a Friday, I have a certain time that I clock off. I don't log back on until Monday morning. So there are things that I've done that protect my well-being, because if I'm a mess, everything else is a mess.
Yeah.
And so having that time block to log off and thoroughly enjoying my off time, remembering that, while yes, I'm a little crusading for inspiration and sharing messages and wanting to inspire people, I'm also just a 32-year-old chick. So making sure that I also nourish myself personally and have a life, that's been critical. Actually makes my business grow. Funny.
Yeah, I agree. And that was another question I was going to ask. What kind of hobbies do you have?
That's interesting. I wouldn't say that I have a hobby like my partner said earlier. Tell him you knit. No, I don't knit. I don't do knitting. But I like my shopping. I love to spend time with my partner. I love spending time with the people that I care about. And I love go out into nature and really just, clock off and just go and spend some time somewhere else, walking on the beach, just enjoying life, go out for dinner. For me, I would say, I love to read as well, but I often read business books. So I try not to do too much of that on a weekend, because otherwise my brain logs on. Right?
I've had so many angry girlfriends in the past. We go on holidays laying on the beach and I'm reading business books.
Yeah, but you love that. Yeah, I totally get
That's
that.
right.
I totally get it. So I'm choosy. I try to read the business books during the week now. But occasionally I'm okay with it. Like full on. I just read one last weekend and I loved it. So I'm okay with it. But yeah, the hobbies it's really just about having a life outside of that. I'm about to start Pilates as well, which I think is going to burn. So just bringing in those things that are normal and human and that bring you joy. You need to fill your cup. Otherwise it's not going to work.
Yep. Now, this question I know you will be big on. So maybe talk a bit about professional development you've invested in yourself over the years.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'd say personal and professional development, so in the form of training, mentors, programs, has been critical for me to be where I am today. So I did a lot of personal development in my late teens, like NLP, and I went to Bali and meditated in the rice fields for 10 days. And I did a lot of self-development work. But then Dr. DiMartini was one of my first mentors where I really seriously invested in myself. So I invested about $30,000 in his courses and training by the time I was maybe 23, 24 years old. I've routinely invested in his trainings over the years, going back, doing the breakthrough experience again. So I've definitely invested with John. And I've had marketing mentors, where I've done $10,000 investments, business coaches where I've worked with them for sort of 10 weeks at a time, currently working with a new one who's blowing my mind. She's amazing. And so I've worked with different people over the years and read a lot of business books. I've read a lot of business books. So it's been a combination, but I also had a mentor who I worked with for about 2 or 3 years who was not really like a paid agreement, but he basically taught me almost everything I know about internet marketing, and he would take a percentage of what we were earning in the courses. So I've had different kind of engagements with mentors over the time.
Yeah, great. And I assume you don't have a board of directors or advisors at the moment?
Only inside my head. No, I do inside my head. I have a couple of key people that I talk to. So not a formal arrangement. There are probably 3 or 4 people that I talk to specifically about business development, because I realize I cannot do this on my own. Nobody can. We all need that. So whether it's a formal arrangement or not, you need that board. You absolutely need them.
Yep. Good. All right, Emily, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Oh, great question. I think the hardest thing about growing a small business, maintaining that balance is important, but making sure that the business you're growing is actually taking you in the direction of your purpose and your legacy. Because I see a lot of business owners, and I've done it at times in my own business, where they get swamped in what they're doing and they've maybe picked the wrong business model and they lose themselves. And so I think the hardest thing is finding the right model, making sure you're working with the right people, and ensuring that every action you take inside that business actually helps you fulfill what you originally set out to do. Because it's very easy to get lost and listen to outside opinion. And I'd say that's probably the hardest thing, is maintaining that direction and the inspiration for that over time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And throw in there my stubbornness and don't like failure. I've certainly held on to businesses and projects far too long.
I can't relate to that stubbornness.
Favorite business book would just help you the most?
So difficult to pick. You're talking to a writer. I love books. I would have to say that Profit First, which I talked about already. I think that was the book that helped me when I look at the tangible change in my business and also my own stress levels and fulfillment. When I look at the biggest change, I think Profit First was that for me, because we went from being constantly behind in tax bills and me being stressed and worrying, and I wasn't really getting paid, and I was working my butt off, but I wasn't really getting rewarded properly for that. That turned that whole situation around. So I think in terms of fulfillment, that was the biggest. Obviously, there's a lot of other ones too, but that was a really good one.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I'm a little bit more of a business book reading kind of girl. So I have to say I don't actually follow a lot of podcasts or online training. I do watch what people are doing in the industry and learn different things from like Gary Vee, or even a little bit sometimes from like Grant Cardone or Marie Forleo. And I kind of watch what they're doing, but I wouldn't say that there's one person online that I'm following more than others.
Okay. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Have a dashboard for yourself.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
It's interesting because I just updated my dashboard, but I think it's so important to make sure you're measuring the right thing. So we just created a financial dashboard. That is kind of the next level of what we already do, but we have a spreadsheet for a lot of different things. I don't mind Microsoft so much in terms of, I'm a writer. I like Microsoft Word. That's it. That's all I'll say. But
I'm a Google fan.
Okay, all right. I use that too. So I use Google Sheets. We have a central sheet that is about global financials. And so what it does is it looks at the financials across my whole business. So we have cash flow projection, which tracks every invoice, everything that's coming in, what's overdue, when it's overdue. And it also tracks expenses, exactly what the expenses are, monthly, weekly, yearly. We look at, leads, exactly where the leads are at, and it's on one whole spreadsheet.
That's great.
You can pretty much run the entire business off that one spreadsheet. So it keeps everything in one place. And you ask for tool. I think that's one of the best things a business owner can set up, is to have those KPIs always in the right place and to be able to track it so that you can connect, for example, your leads in your front end through to what's happening on the back end. So I think having a spreadsheet like that is really important.
Yep, good advice. And finally, my favorite question, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Don't you dare give up. Great things are coming. It's like, no, don't you dare give up, because there are times where it's tough. And I go, wow, because I'm way out of my depth here. And I started out as a writer. So I'm really a creative. I didn't start out with business skills. This is a skill set I had to learn. This is a secondary skill set. I write so easily, touch type, write with my eyes closed, write inspirational quotes. If I had $1 for every quote I'd written, I'm so naturally a writer. And so for me to learn the business skills required to package what I do so that I could change people's lives, spend more time with them, that was not always easy. There's a lot of self-development work required, a lot of understanding how Facebook ads and websites work. And I've learned a lot of tech stuff over the years. And it was just, if I say to myself, don't give up, this is going to be tough at times. But what's on the other side of this is so rewarding that you're not going to want to miss this. I gave myself goosebumps actually when I said that, because it's how I feel, because I could never have seen this back then. And so it was like, don't you dare give up, not even for a moment, even when it's tough.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks, Emily, for your time today. I think the audience will get a lot of insight and inspiration out of your journey and your business. And congratulations on your success so far.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.